Okay, we're going to call this meeting of the
No, hit yourself.
Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency to order at 5:09 p.m. Commissioners, I've been asked by the audio crew that when you speak, if you would speak directly into the microphone, they can pick you up. If you turn your head, they can't. So make sure you speak directly into the microphone. Ben, do we have any agenda modifications at this point?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The ratification item of the workshop that you just held is distributed now in hard copy. It's effectively swapping out a placeholder page. That would be the only agenda modification to accept.
Okay, did we need to move the blueprint project updates? And
yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the reminder. Yes, sir. Just to expedite time flow and acknowledging all that's going on, if we could move the blueprint project updates and the OEV project updates to the end of the meeting after the public hearing, that would be appreciated as well.
Okay, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second. We got a motion and a second. Without any objections, we will accept the agenda as modified. Mr. Chairman, is the chairman here?
Chairman Hugh Tomlinson?
Yeah, okay.
Good afternoon, members. I told him I'd be pretty brief. I've got the pretty part down. I'll try to be brief now. The Citizens Advisory Committee meeting was held last 2 weeks ago, and we received project and status updates from both the Blueprint and OE staff consistent with our normal committee procedures. During a project update on the Capitol Cascades Trail Segment 3, we were presented with 4 options for recommendation to the IA, which were supported unanimously by all members, which included option 1, authorize staff to proceed with the procurement of construction of the proposed pond amenities, the St. Mark's Trailhead, and the Coal Chute Pond Trail Loop in conjunction with the City of Tallahassee's FAMU Way Phase 3 project, and to authorize the place director to execute a third amendment to the MOU between City and Blueprint IA dated May 2nd, 2017. Second option authorized was staff to procure the design and construction services for Cascades Trail Segment 3 restroom in accordance with the Blueprint procurement policy. Option 3, authorize staff to issue an RFP for the History and Cultural Trail interpretive kiosk installations in accordance with the Blueprint procurement policy. Authorize staff to enter into an agreement with the Council of Cultural and Arts to assist with the artist solicitation and selection of the public art component of the project in a form approved by the legal counsel and the place director to execute the same. And option 4, we accepted the report as provided. Further discussion by the CAC members beyond the stated recommendations included that the Segment 3 restrooms be ADA accessible and consider designs consistent with the family changing room, restrooms, and for public safety that the crime prevention through environmental design concepts be included and considered for safety purposes. The CAC committee supported consent items 1 through 8, which included approving prior meeting minutes, acceptance of the Blueprint and OEV reports, proposed meeting schedule for 2019, appointment and reappointment of some committee members, recognition of the sunset of the Smoky Hollow Commemoration Working Group, modifications to the Target Business Program, and recommendations to enter to a joint partnership agreement to fund enhanced roadway lighting on Capitol Circle Southwest. The CAC committee chose not to take a position on consent item 9, which involved eminent domain procedures on 3 citizen-owned properties due to not knowing the entirety of facts or being privy to the specific circumstances or negotiations taking place. And in conclusion, the committee applauded the formal promotion of Autumn Calder as the director of Blueprint. And that's your report from the CAC.
All right, any questions for the chairman?
Accept the report, except for the accolades for Autumn.
Their motion.
Motion to accept.
Motion and a second to accept the report from the chairman without any objections. Show that accepted. And now we've got some very special recognitions and awards to make. tumultuously for years on the Smoky Hollow commemoration, and they are both here this afternoon. I've got some brief prepared remarks I'd like to give. So on behalf of the commission and certainly a grateful community, for those of you that, and I'm sure the members of the committee can probably, not probably, can go into much more detail than I, that Smoky Hollow was once a thriving African-American community where the Florida Department of Transportation building and Cascades Park generally exist today. And through no actions of their own, that community was I don't want to say wiped out, but taken over by other interests, and the residents and businesses that existed there dispersed throughout the city. We were very fortunate to be able to save and restore one of the historic establishments from that community, the Smoky Hollow Barbershop. And if you haven't had a chance to visit that, I would encourage you to do so. It's located just underneath the overpass on Appalachia Parkway, near the Riley House Museum and the other Smoky Hollow sites. And so with that, I'd like to recognize those that worked, some of those committee members that worked on the committee in particular and led guidance and direction to that committee. So with that, then for the past 7 years, the Smoky Hollow Working Group has worked to collect and to preserve the stories of the rich and vibrant community of Smoky Hollow, bringing it back to life in Cascades Park with the Smoky Hollow commemoration, which opened in 2015, and the Smoky Hollow Barbershop, as I mentioned, which opened this past April. It was with the guidance and direction, oral histories, and sustained participation of the working group that the history of Smoky Hollow has been preserved for future generations. Not only were their stories shared, but family photos of the work group members were provided for the interpretive signs at the commemoration and barbershop. And family heirlooms were also donated by members that now serve as artifacts in the barbershop display. The working group was highly engaged throughout the life of the project, and the successes of this group have been recognized with 5 different awards over the years. The efforts of the Smoky Hollow Working Group since 2011 have honored the residents of Smoky Hollow, and they've helped to solidify their legacy as a meaningful community of people of the community of Tallahassee. At this time, we'd like to recognize the working group members, and I'd like to also recognize a former resident of the Smoky Hollow community who's with us, and that is Mr. Ron Spencer. Ron, if you would raise your hand or stand. And the members of the working group then were Rosetta Griffin, Cicero Hartsfield, who's here, Mary Hartsfield, Velma Larkins, Jesselyn White, Essie McGee, Maisha Mitchell, Jennifer Coslow, Jeff Castor, Mr. and Mrs. Lester Oliver, Mr. Torio Osborne, Mia Shargle, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Julianne Hare, and Zella Gaines posthumously. We would also like to specifically recognize the chairman of the Smoky Hollow Work Group, Mr. John Lawrence. John, if you would make your way to the podium. Miss Altamise, and the vice chair of the working group, Miss Altamise Barnes. Altamise, if you would come forward. Mr. Lawrence provided exemplary leadership for the working group and thoughtful perspective and direction for the project. Ms. Barnes provided unwavering support and guidance for the working group while also sharing the story of Smoky Hollow through many efforts undertaken by the John G. Riley Center and Museum. Thank you both for your commitment and dedication to the project over these years, and we have a small token of our appreciation for each of you. This plaque reads, "In appreciation for your dedicated service, John Lawrence, Smoky Hollow Working Group Chairman," and it's dated September 20th, 2018. John, thank you so
Let me just say thank you for this recognition. We had several meetings, had a lot of discussion. The thing that made us feel good as we moved throughout this process is knowing that you were behind us. I don't like to spin my wheels. I'm too old for that, thinking that we're making a difference and it's really nothing happening. So I just want to tell you how much we appreciate what you did to help us. And I tell you, this is something, as you pass by there, this is something that Tallahassee can be proud of. Do you agree? Yes. You agree. And I see Wayne Tedder over there. He's a jewel for this community because he was the person. Did you all believe that too? Yeah. And it's ironic that I would be here tonight as Autumn Calder got a promotion. Congratulations, Autumn. Again, thank you all for your support, and this will be something that's available for people for years to come to pass by and look. And I look forward to bringing my grandchildren down here from North Carolina and let them know that Papa had some influence on that. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, John. And Altamise, we have a similar token of appreciation for you as Vice Chairwoman of the working group, and the plaque reads the same as John's, but we certainly appreciate not only what you have done as Vice Chairman of this work group, Altamise, but all that you have done over the years that I've known you, starting at the State Department of Education, to preserve African American history and culture, not only in Tallahassee, but throughout the state of Florida. And we deeply appreciate you for those efforts. Here, here. Did you want to say something?
I would just echo what John has said. It was a pleasure working with this project and others that we have done together. And I would just say on to the next, that they are on the horizon. And thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. All right. Commissioners, thank you for your indulgence on that. We felt it was something absolutely necessary to do at this point. We have modified the consent agenda, and Ben, you had
Yes, just
Scrivener's note.
just very quickly, we were trying to get it reprinted twice now. You'll note that what we distributed to you includes action number 7 for item number 10. Item number 10 on consent, which is ratification of the workshop. Please note for the record in the motion to approve consent that on item number 10, action number 7 is removed entirely. I think that then conforms with what you actually did at the workshop.
Okay.
Apologies for the confusion.
I checked. All right. Okay. Everybody okay with that? Commissioner Miller?
I had asked to pull number 5. I just
Move consent with number 5 pulled.
Second. Okay. There's a motion and a second to accept consent. Approve consent with number 5 removed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. We are on item number 5. Commissioner Miller?
well, there are 2 parts to that item. There are 2 different appointees. And in the first case, there's the appointee from the Big Bend Environmental Forum is someone who works very extensively with a number of projects and is pretty regularly involved in grant proposals to the agency. And I think that given the fact that one of the blueprint projects is the alternative wastewater solutions, and he's very definitely involved with that with the Walla Alliance, and so I'm hesitant to support him on the Blueprint Citizens Advisory Committee due to that conflict of interest. And So I just wanted to pull that item because I was going to vote no.
Okay, all right. And for the audience's sake, item 5 is appointment and reappointment of members to the Blueprint Citizens Advisory Committee. You have heard Commissioner Miller's comments. What is your pleasure? Commissioner Dozier?
Thank you, sir. I think Mr. McGlynn would be a good member of the committee, but I understand Commissioner Miller's concern about recusals. We've seen that at times on Planning Commission, on other boards, when someone has to recuse themselves too often to be effective. So I'm wondering if staff has any comment on that, or if we could put a pause on this and get some more information about the potential impact.
I'll take this. We're happy to pause if you desire. I would note, I would note that if you look at attachment number 1, and this is the process that we follow, attachment number 1 does provide the applicant the ability to state conflicts of interest specific to this point. In this case, none were stated by the applicant. Doesn't mean they exist or not, but that's the process that we follow. We're happy to, if you do not want to take action, we're happy to conduct more staff work, but we followed the process in receiving the recommendation from the noted group and put it before you in the proper format here today. Happy to take any lead. Commissioner Dozier?
Mr. Chair, I'm respecting Commissioner Miller's concerns. I'd move the item for approval, just noting that for the future, should there be ongoing recusals for any reason.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Commissioner Nick Maddox?
So we could take no action and allow staff to do further research on this?
What further research would there be?
Well, I mean, because he signed, because this applicant signed and said there was no conflict, I think with Commissioner Miller's reservations, I mean, is staff comfortable with there not being any conflict? There's a difference between him signing and saying there's no conflict and staff saying we see no conflict. If staff says they see no conflict, then I'm okay. But if staff can't, without reservation, say that we see no conflict, then I can't vote for this.
Staff has not conducted a review as to potential conflicts of this applicant. Staff has worked with the Big Bend Environmental Forum to gain their recommendation for who to appoint, asked the individual to fill out paperwork whereby he or she would identify any conflicts that they believe may exist. None were filed in this case. If you wish to take no action, we can go back to the Big Bend Environmental Forum and express the concerns, see if there's someone else that they would like to appoint.
No, that's not necessarily that. I just want, again, I'm not saying go back to them and ask them to appoint anybody else. I'm asking you and staff to tell me that you do not believe that this person has a conflict. If you can't tell me that, I'm asking staff to go back and research whether or not there is a conflict and be able to come back and say without reservation that there isn't one. Is that a substitute motion? That would be my substitute motion. Second.
There's a substitute motion and a second. Any questions on the substitute? Hearing none, all in favor of the substitute motion, which is?
My substitute motion is that we would table this and have staff bring it back with analysis on whether or not staff determined there to be a conflict of this applicant. If there's no conflict, then at that time we can accept the applicant.
All in favor of the substitute motion? Oh, Mr. Attorney.
I'm sorry. Commissioner Deloge?
Could we accept it conditionally? I mean, is there a way to say, look, we're going to go ahead and accept it, but if you find something that you think rises to the level of a problem, kick it back to us? At least, because when are we going to meet again?
December 13th?
December, yeah. So let's go forward with the motion. All in favor of the substitute?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt. But we do recommend you take action on option number 2, which is the reappointment of members of the committee, Alan Stux and Claudette Cromartie.
Let's do this one first.
Yeah.
So moved.
One last. We have to dispense with the other motion.
Okay, is this
One
to the
last comment
substitute
on the
motion?
substitute motion real quick. The reason why I was comfortable making that motion is because, like with any of us, we don't know what conflicts may come down in the future. So if Mr. McGlynn has not had repeated conflicts or other things, that was my question. If he has not come before on repeated contracts, I'm not sure what we discover in the next 3 months. It's just something we need to look at in the future. So I just wanted to put a clarification on that this is of concern. If we have someone who has to recuse themselves often and has potential conflicts, I'm not sure if we could gain anything else in discussion. I'm fine with the substitute motion as is if others want more information, but Mr. Attorney, do you think there's a way to discover based on past precedent? We don't know what's going to be on the agenda in the future necessarily.
There's two ways to handle it, and that is the board could instruct staff, me, to inquire of the nominee. The other manner by which you could handle it is to direct staff to report back on the basis of an appointment if there are continuing conflicts, and make the appointment and then say, but monitor the situation. If there are recurring conflicts of interest, this board maintains the authority to remove anybody from your Citizens Advisory Committee.
Option B, Mr. Chair, was the intent of my motion. So I just wanted to clarify that we would make the appointment but continue to monitor this as.
Yeah. And that would have been we're anticipating frequent conflicts of interest.
We have an extensive 20-page resume that was attached. I think that what I would like to see is for staff to go through that and notice how many of those projects might have conceivably created a conflict if this had been before, and because that way you're going to see the kinds of work and the kinds of projects. And in addition, I think having a discussion with the applicant and make sure that it's very clear that this will preclude any ability to apply for grant money from Blueprint in the future. And I think that, that's only fair, it seems to me. Those are the kinds of things I'd like for you to do between now and December, and then bring it back with your conclusion.
Okay. Now, will that then harm their ability to have a quorum, for instance, or an odd number of, because won't
No, not on this
one. The person
one.
that's there now will serve until the appointment is made?
I don't anticipate an issue with a quorum.
All right.
With the CA.
And Commissioner Maddox's motion, Commissioner Miller captures? Yes. Okay. Commissioner Proctor?
Well, I've never heard us condition consideration of a member to serve on a committee based upon our own spaced out idea of do they pose a potential conflict. I'm just noting that I've never heard this discussed at all in any arena at any time. So it's an odd step, but I guess it points us in the wonderful direction of warming up and embracing ethical considerations. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could also, second to my motion would accept it, go ahead and include the acceptance of the other two appointees or recommendations.
Well, let's handle that one, and then I can't imagine we'll have a problem handling the other two separately.
Well, Mr. Chair, why would we single out and not do all of them? Shouldn't they all be vetted in the same light? Do we cherry pick who deserves to have the special review versus those who pass some arbitrary thought test to us? I think that's not fair. We're creating a sliding rule standard that's just not stable standstill. I'm not comfortable letting two slide and holding up another one based on perspective, innuendos, or suspicion of conflict in the future.
Okay. And the outcome of the motion will determine that. Commissioner Proctor, all in favor of the substitute motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. It sounds like it. Show of hands. All in favor of the substitute motion, if you would raise your hand. Those opposed? The motion passes.
Move on
Right.
to Mr. Chairman.
Okay. There's a motion and a second on option 2. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. We're cooking now. Yeah. Okay.
Could I make a comment on this?
Okay. All right. We've got some. Oh, yes.
I just want to make, I think it's probably a good practice in general in a situation like this one, that you do have the opportunity to have an eye-to-eye discussion with these folks and make it very clear to them up front that, because that's part of my motivation here, make it clear to them up front that their position on the committee is going to put them in a situation where they really can't be putting in grant proposals for IA and Blueprint money if they're on the Citizens Committee voting on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Miller.
Mr. Chairman, I still think that should be universally applied to everybody.
Yes.
We now will move into the public hearing that was scheduled at 5:30. Then do we have any persons to be heard on the...
We've got a process here, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'd be happy to walk us through. Chairman, we're at that section of the agenda where we are to consider the operating and capital improvements budget at a public hearing. I'll be making a brief presentation, then we are required to take public comments. Thereafter, close the public testimony portion of the hearing and engage in board discussion, ultimately to a vote. With your permission, I'll start on the brief presentation now. All right, so as you see, it's the 2019 operating budget, 2019 to 23 capital improvement budget. Commissioners, this slide is really just indicative of all the good work that you've done that leads into and informs the budget plan that's before you. Starting with the sales tax referendum, you guys, this body got right to work. Project lists have been approved. Prioritization has occurred. OEV was created back in 2016. Prioritization on infrastructure more recently. And then, of course, at the last meeting, infrastructure implementation plan was approved. What you see before you today is the next key step to implement and effectuate that which you have previously given us the direction upon. So at a high level, this is really it. What you see is we are seeking to achieve more with actually just a little bit less funding allocated both on the Blueprint infrastructure side, 0.54% less, and on the OEV side, 1.32% less. This is captured through increased efficiencies. And by sunsetting of the GEC, we are able to increase the internal staff capacity, particularly on infrastructure, without a corresponding increase in the overall budget capacity. We appreciate the contractor for their years of service. We acknowledge that it was a good fit for the Blueprint 2000 model. We believe this is a better fit moving into 2020. I would also like to note that we're wasting no time in accordance with your direction to now ramp up Blueprint 2020 funds for capital projects. As noted here, the $22.164 million for capital projects is 36% higher than the current fiscal year, and that trend will, of course, continue as we implement the 5-year plan that you gave us direction on at the last meeting.
Quick question before you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
By bringing those project management in-house, are we going to have to hire new staff, or do we expect that you're going to do this within existing?
No, sir. We will. We do anticipate, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, we do anticipate hiring new staff. We will sunset out the remaining staff that are contracted through the GEC, but this does include onboarding new project management staff, planning staff, and those staff, only those staff necessary to specifically align with the work plan necessary to meet our goals for those projects that you gave us the direction at your last meeting to amplify and move to construction within the first 5 years.
And just by contrast, we expect to save how much?
Year over year, we expect to save, I don't have the dollar figure, but it's 0.54%. Basically, the GEC solution did include, this always was the case, but it did include an overhead component to that that will no longer apply when we bring on our own staff.
Got it. I'll just say, I know we still have this presentation to go. If I'm probably more partial to assuming that pay is equitable both on the public and the private sector part, to be more partial to the private sector being involved in the buying and the spending and the tax generating power of this work. But that's just my thought.
Just a couple more slides. This slide is indicative of those. So now breaking down the $22.164 million of capital program allocations, you can see the onboarding building upon what was discussed at the last meeting, the onboarding of Wilani Boulevard, Airport Gateway. We're starting now to invest in these projects, Northeast Connector, Bannerman Road, Orange Avenue, Meridian Road placemaking, Market District, et cetera. $16.6 million being allocated towards Blueprint 2000 projects, and $5.8 million now starting in advance for Blueprint 2020 projects. Again, this I think just covers what I've already gone over. No increase in operating expenses, bottom line, and an increased expenditure in capital projects. These are the 4 recommended actions, 4-year action at the time that the public comment period is concluded. So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, that concludes my presentation. At this juncture, I would ask, Mr. Chairman, that you call for any public speakers on the proposed budget plan.
Okay, do we have any speakers on the proposed budget plan?
I have no speaker cards on this item.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak and did not complete a speaker's card? Okay. Seeing none, can we get a motion on adoption of the budget as presented, options 1 through 4?
I'm sorry? You would like to speak, sir? You turned in for item number 13, a separate item, sir.
Okay, yeah.
Do we get a comment on this, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Commissioner Proctor.
Mr. Chairman, the fact that I didn't see the fairground project on the list, does that mean that the fairground is not going to be carried in the next 5-year window? Is that what that's saying, Ben?
Yes, sir. And I believe, I can't recall which attachment it is on the budget item, but you see the prioritization that was conducted, I think, 2 meetings ago. My recollection, I'm not going to give you a number of the sum, but it was right in the middle, is where the fairgrounds landed, sir.
Right, and that's why I can't support this, Mr. Chairman. We don't even have $1 committed to the fairground, and we're moving $750,000 on the Bannerman project and other projects that I thought have leapfrogged, come to the front of the line, and I'm really disappointed. I mean, really, at the height of passivity about the omission of the fairground project. We are talking about this connector and improvement of Monroe Street and this vitality between Adams Street and Monroe Street, And then we're talking about this new spaces for the convention center. And I firmly see that that fairground project would be a spillover site for meetings, community meetings. And even though we anticipate that Florida State would do the right thing and the new convention center would offer public space, but I believe that notwithstanding that a more public space in place would be the fairground that our community has utilized for years and years and years. And it's very disappointing. And I can't see how this body is comfortable voting for a plan. And I want to offer a substitute motion that we include the North Florida Fair and the $12 million that voters have approved for this, and that it too receive the same kind of, I think the word is calibration for the incremental, at least to say that it's being studied. The last study that we did was probably in, Ken, was the last study we did around 2000 and who knows, Patrick, you may well know, long time ago. But we need a new study, and there ought to be money for that, at least a feasibility study. And it shouldn't take food off of our table to place some money in there for a study. This is plain wrong. And this plan that you got here before us, in my opinion, is not equitable, it's not geographic equitable, And I think, and no, I don't think, I'm sure we can do better than this. And there's no reason the fairground should wait, beyond 2023. How long do you wait? Did I tell you that there is no public bathroom in a building out there? Have I told you that everything is an outdoor toilet in the fairground? County commissioners, I'm asking the county commissioners to stand up for this facility. The voters voted for it. I've been crying and slinging snot and telling y'all to come on, get with this. I need some help out of y'all. Don't let this window close for 5 more years on a facility that with our name on it that ain't got an indoor toilet. Something is wrong. So I make the substitute motion asking desperately that we don't leave this facility. I went up there and up to the mom and pop's place the other day. Panama Square have just leaped out the ground in a brand new city. They were having a downtown get down. I didn't think it was downtown, but they was having a get down, and we can't get anything going on the fairground. Commissioners, do you all not see that? I can't get your help. The people can't get your help. Why would we slam the door for 5 years and all this money is sitting in here on the table? And we voted for it. I'm asking for you all's help on this. We need, our community would be richer if there is a qualitative expansion of resources, public facilities vested in all parts of the community. I ain't got nowhere to hold anything on the south end. I need that. FSU can come to this table and get some money, can build a brand new convention center. We're talking about brand new public space for hotels. I supported all of that. There is enough money, y'all, for me to get some to have a fairground facility. Otherwise, you just either, you're talking the talk, not walking the walk. There's no way that you can not be familiar that ain't nothing down there. A church house, Bethel AME should not be the largest public facility. A church should not be the largest public facility in an area surrounded by Rickard School, Oak Ridge School, Tram Road is right down there in the middle between the Capitol Complex and the State Office Complex out there at Southwood. It's the midway point between Southwood, which is a state area, and downtown, which is a state area. But down there in the middle, don't even have a grocery store. It's hard to find a job. John Lawrence, it's hard to find a job mustard down there, job mayonnaise, a pair of stockings. And this area needs to come up. We can bring it up. I've seen what we've done for Bannerman. We found money to put up there on that and ignore this south end of town. It's amazing. And I'm asking you all to support the substitute motion that monies are put forward, that we would move the fairground forward with all of these other projects. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There's a substitute motion. Is there a second? It dies for lack of a second.
Chair, on the original, I have a question.
Yes. We're back to the original motion to accept options 1 through 4. Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'm fine with the other parts of the agenda item, except this question about whether or not we bring in-house all of the sort of the management function. One of the things I appreciated about Blueprint earlier on was the fact that we took taxpayer resources and kind of spread it pretty widely throughout the private sector for the benefit of the public. And if, again, these are private sector businesses who in large part live in a city or county that is mostly government jobs. And if the difference is not quite de minimis, but not significant enough to bring those functions in-house, but to rather have them be done outside, I'm not sure that the savings that we see shown here by bringing inside, especially if salaries and benefits are sort of similar in the private sector, that we ought to take the move to take it from private sector job creation to bring it inside the government, especially and largely because those jobs on the pension end, they tend to grow. I think that's obviously good for those that are pre-existing, but if we have an opportunity to see I think the private sector benefit from this and pay taxes as a part of and contribute to the community in that way. I'm more partial to it rather than growing what is increasingly becoming a pretty big operation with the new functions that we've recently added to Blueprint. So I just wanted to raise the issue of bringing those jobs inside versus allowing them to remain in the private sector.
Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mayor, I gave this piece a lot of thought. I was on the board when we brought the Blueprint operations inside the Planning Department and now with OEV. I was sold at that time that there was some economy of scale with our Planning Department, with others, with the expertise in moving some of those operations in-house, and just greater efficiency with the alignment of the different departments. I agree with you in general. If we can look for ways where the private sector could benefit, we don't need to duplicate those services. So I do think that it's good to raise that point. I think in this one, and this is more of a question, and since I have not chimed in before, Autumn, I'm going to toss you your first question as director of Blueprint. So congratulations for that. I'm glad you're with us officially, no longer interim. So looking at the chart, yes, it is a marginal savings right now, 0.54, but we have saved a lot of money in past years. If I'm looking at this chart right, even before Blueprint 2020 referendum went in, we were spending a couple $1 million on consultants and about $1 million on our staff, and it started to right the ship there. And so is it fair to say that there are even greater efficiencies that have been captured in recent years as we've brought more and more of this work into the Blueprint house versus consultants? Is that?
Autumn, would you address that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. You're dead on. We have downsized the GEC over the last 6 years. You've seen downsizing there. Currently, in our GEC contract for this year, we've funded 3 project management positions. The ratio between hiring somebody in-house and the cost of one of those, average ratio, is about 1/3 of the cost. We're making a request today for 7 new positions. Those positions are being paid for by the offset of only those 3 GEC positions. Now, in terms of continuing to invest money in the community and into the private sector, absolutely. These are project management functions that are tied to just the day-to-day management of the project. We won't be doing in-house design. We'll continue to outsource that. Our capital improvement program for this next year shows almost a $35 million investment in the capital projects alone. So that's after operating expenses come out.
Quick question.
Thank you.
As a follow-up, if you don't mind, before your next one, Commissioner.
Just one last phrase, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be done. I think you raise a good question to dig into more. If we are able to return more operating dollars to construction projects or to the design work, I think we will support our common goal of the private sector funding, even with this position alignment. I think that's what I wanted to drill down to is you've got the right question. I agree with you. This one repositioning, I think, actually supports that goal longer term.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor, as a follow-up. Autumn, so I heard you correctly, and thank you for the response and the question. You all are going to hire 7 full-time to replace what were 3 in the private sector?
Well, we had 3 GEC positions that were funded for, given the 8 projects that we were managing in fiscal year 18. We're going up to a management of 14 projects in fiscal year 19 as a result of the direction here we've received on advanced funding the projects. So the cost of the GEC and the savings from those 3 positions is, yes, it's spread to those 7 new positions that are tied directly to the implementation of the projects, but it's also an increase in expenses associated with doing more projects as well. So we're still able to manage that essentially no net increase to our operating expenses, even though we've essentially doubled the number of projects that we're implementing in the next year.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to delve down into these new positions just a little bit more. And I hear you say project management positions. Are these going to be engineering positions?
Some will, yes, absolutely. We do believe that some of these more projects like the Airport Gateway, Bannerman Road, those are complicated and intense projects, and I think they will require some engineering expertise there. Our design and construction manager position is required to be a PE, but we do think that there are some other people who are specialized in like CEI and construction engineering inspection is the kind of talent that we need, as well as planning community involvement talent in terms of working with neighborhoods and businesses to make sure that our projects are as blueprint as they can be.
Well, I love that blueprint as they can be, but I am concerned to make sure that your project management teams are very, very strong and are able to notice whether a project actually is on task, is as it was constructed, as it was designed, that those specs are met. That's very important. I think we have to be a little bit more robust in the area.
And I assume, Autumn, that you all will endeavor to meet our MWBE goals as you go out to the marketplace for those individuals for these positions.
Absolutely. We're involved with Darrell and the MWSBE, the disparity study, looking forward to those results.
Okay. Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion. That's options 1 through 4 on the budget. Signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
There are 2 opposed. How many? 3? 3 in opposition. Okay. So the motion passes.
Okay, just backing up here. Pardon my excessive clicking.
Mr. Chairman. It was the Commissioner Proctor, the Mayor, and Commissioner Nick.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So that brings us to item number 9, which is the sunset of the Smoky Hollow.
I think that actually passed as part of consent. We had I think we're on
the sunset of the item.
Yeah, I think that meeting was consent as to the application. The only item that was pulled from consent was the item number 5.
Okay.
Which was discussed here. So we're back on item 11.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, that brings us to item number 11, which is the acceptance of the status report on the activities for the applied science and advanced manufacturing target industries, specifically regarding magnetic technologies. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Ben corrected me earlier, my comment about expanding scope of the site selection inventory is germane to this item. So my question, Ben, just not to repeat what I said earlier, within the scope of these options, do you need any additional direction to at least bring us back the opportunity to expand the scope? Do we need to discuss this now? How would we approach that?
I think what's been identified is a relatively cogent scope of services with a targeted dollar amount. If there was something specific that you would like to expand the scope to look at now, even potentially within the same dollar amount, that would be good to include into the motion, and we'll move forward accordingly. Whether it's in or whether it's out now, we'll move forward in accordance with blueprint procurement practices to secure the right consultant to conduct the work. If it's not included at this point in time, we're happy to, this is part of the continuum, and we'll bring that back to the IA, of course, as we continue to get the strongest site inventory analysis done over time, but completely your discretion.
Mr. Chair, what's behind my question here is if we are going to hire a strategic site inventory consultant to do this mapping, it seems like this is something that we need as a community across all sectors, and to do a really in-depth study. It may cost us more. We may duplicate efforts if we do a portion of that survey now and then hire someone to look at the remainder in the future. I have only heard one presentation from this consultant or from a consultant who's working in our region. So I don't know the answer to that question. So I don't want to hold up this process. I think this is critical for us, and I'm thrilled that staff brought it back. So that's really my question. Can we approve this and then in the future, in the December meeting, look at how to expand the scope and what the cost implication might be? Is that...
I think that's fair, and included in the attachment 1, I think it's page 3 of 10, it talks about the next phases.
Yes.
And so while at the appropriate time, hopefully as early as December, if not potentially the spring meeting, just when this work is conducted, I would anticipate bringing back those findings along with what's next, which I think is what.
And not to belabor this point, I think it's important to have the discussion while the work is ongoing, if we can have some cost savings there. And this, to me, is like the target industry study of last year. We advanced it a year, and if we didn't have that study, we wouldn't be eligible to apply for incubator dollars from the federal government, for example. I have to, that one's going to stay with me all day. But I think this study can help us implement a lot of the things that we're working on right now, recruitment being paramount.
Sure.
And now I'm going to make Mr. Chair, Commissioner Proctor fall out of his chair, so hold on, please. I do not know if what I'm saying is going to open a can of worms, but the fairground property is a strategic site potentially for some people. So I don't want to change the ranking of our projects, but if staff could at least talk to county administrator and staff and see if that site should be assessed by the consultant, I think that may help us get some additional information and provide options in the future.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can make a motion as well for the options, unless we already have a motion.
Yeah. Did we get a motion?
I don't believe we did before my comments, so I'll make a motion for staff recommendation.
Okay. And, yeah, the concern that I had is that, and I appreciate you giving staff the opportunity to bring us something back. I would not have wanted us to take a vote on something where we didn't know the fiscal impact.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, okay. But we'll make sure that it comes back at the appropriate time. Maybe December, but like Ben said, it could be in the spring. But we'll make sure it comes back. Okay, there's a motion and a second on item 11. Any additional questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 12, acceptance of the Capital Cascades Trail Segment 3 project update and authorization request for the Segment 3 trail amenities. Ben?
So moved.
There's a motion and a second.
No, sir, we do not.
Good. All right, motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. I know we do have one speaker on item number 13, which is the status update on the Blueprint 2020 Northeast Connector Bannerman Road project.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. We do have one speaker. We do also have one a brief presentation, if you would like for Ms. Calder to give it. It's your discretion, but you do at the proper time have one speaker card on this.
Okay, is there a motion on item 13? Yeah, just for discussion, and then we'll give the speaker, of course, an opportunity to speak. There's a motion and a second on item number 13. We do have one speaker, Max Hurley, 117 South Gaston Street. Mr. Hurley, if you would approach the podium, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Max Hurley, 117 South Gadsden Street. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Summerbrook Property Owners Association. Since the rezoning of the Cawthon property, which is the property adjacent to Summerbrook, we've been working with the developers of that property on that issue, including the road widening issue. We've also been working with staff on this. Thank you to Ben and Autumn. You've both been very helpful. I'm happy to report that there's peace in the kingdom. Both the neighborhoods and developers are supportive of item 13, options 1 and 2. Which expands the scope of the Bannerman Road widening PD&E to 4 lanes all the way to Bull Headley, not just to Tequesta. We're also hoping that as the PD&E process plays out over the next 18 months, that the EIA looks into the idea of expanding the scope of the PD&E to include feasibility for right-of-way acquisition and road widening all the way to Meridian.
Okay. Thank you, Max. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the item signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Oh, you said I oppose. Okay. Show Commissioner Proctor in opposition to the item.
Mr. Chairman, you're now at citizens to be heard.
I think we've got several.
We have 3 citizens indicating that they would like to be heard. Read them out for you.
Yes.
Lauren Perlman, please. First, please come to the podium if you're still here. To be followed by Katie McFall. To be followed by Frank Alarcon.
And Lauren, if you would give us your name and address for the record, please, and you will have 3 minutes.
Sure. Before they speak, in relative, because it relates to her topic, could you tell us what page the timeline for all the projects can be located on?
It just says public comment, which says item number.
It's on the animal shelter.
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, the animal shelter.
Yeah, but there's somewhere in here that we
Well,
have
if
a
you
page.
go, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
34 shows the rankings. Page 234.
Okay.
Thank you. Lauren Perlman, 6349 Fitz Lane, Tallahassee, Florida. Thank you, Chair, Mayor, and Commissioners. I really wanted to thank you, first of all, for all you have done over the years for the animal shelter, for the homeless animals. Truly, we see how much you care. Intakes are down at the shelter. Many more lives have been saved. It just truly, really is amazing, and thank you. I recently sent an email to all of you, and I just wanted to make sure that you saw what we see every day at the shelter, that we want this to remain a priority, whether it's in the blueprint priority. We hope that it's there, it's still there. We were excited about that. It's something we need sooner rather than later. There may be other funding mechanisms for this as well, and that's great. I don't claim to understand how this process works. Appreciate all the hard work the staff has put into this, but we really just want you to know and see that we have a 20-year-old shelter, that it is obsolete. There are parts of it not working. There are parts of it we've had to close down, and we really wanted to stress how important it is that this remains a priority. And I'm happy to talk to some of you down the road or any of the staff just to follow up with this, but thank you very, very much for all you do. And we have a few of our red shirt representatives back here as well that came, so thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Katie McFall. Katie, if you would give us your name and address for the record, please. You have 3 minutes.
Great, thank you so much. It's actually Kate McFall, and it's 1206. I know my handwriting's terrible.
Okay.
Katie works too. 1206 Walton Drive, Tallahassee, Florida. So to echo some of the things Lauren said, we do appreciate your commitment to animals and to animal services. It's obvious. Many of you guys have adopted pets from animal services. And by the way, we have some really special animals right now. One girl, Ginger, that I wanted to point out is a really special girl you might want to come and see at Animal Services. But we do appreciate that, and we're in desperate need of a new building. There are a number of challenges that we could talk about, and I also want to thank you for many of you have met with me and with a group of us very recently, and I'm really grateful for your time. But we do want this to remain a priority, and we need a modern, more inviting, community-based, up-to-date facility. It's actually a little over 20 years old. I've been here 20 years, and it was here when I got here, so it's closer to 24 years old. But we just want this to remain a priority, and if we're hearing that this is not going to make the short list, that may be the case, but we do need to look at other ways to address some of the immediate problems and then remain on the longer-term list. There was an independent inspection done recently. My understanding is there are a number of critical items that need to be addressed right away. That report will be coming out very soon. So thank you. In closing, we appreciate your commitment and want you to know how important this project is and this program and the need for a new facility. And we are here to help in whatever way possible, working with you going forward to support the animals and the staff, of course. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Kate. Frank Alarcon. Did I pronounce that correctly, Frank? Close enough. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Frank Alarcon, 3515 O'Falley Court, 32309 zip code. My name is Frank Alarcon. I am the chair of the Tallahassee-Leon County Animal Shelter Board, and I'm here to represent the 13 board members and over 360 volunteers to ask that you please make this a priority. Please make the renovation or construction of a new shelter a priority in this funding cycle. Other board members are also here, and you've obviously already heard a couple of speakers today. I believe you have in your possession a letter that I sent a couple of weeks ago reflecting the views of the board. Let me ask a question real quick. How many of you around the table here either have a pet or have had a pet? Raise your hand. Yeah, not surprising. Not surprising at all. In fact, we know approximately 178,000 households in this community have a dog. Approximately 228,000 households in this region have a cat. And those of you who had pets, those of you who had animals, you know that you treat them like a member of your family. Well, guess what? Our outstanding shelter staff save at least 4,100 family members on an annual basis. Now, that's about a 75% live release rate. That means there's 25% that don't make it. Now, don't those animals, don't those family members, don't those staff deserve an adequate, healthy, and fully functioning and efficient shelter? I have a handout that I'm going to leave with you because I know our time is short. It's a 2-page handout with some bullets. It gives you some basic information about why this should be a priority and also the benefits that would be derived by creating a new facility. But just as a footnote, keep in mind, just in the last 6 years, we spent $500,000 in maintenance and repairs just on the AC and HVAC stuff. We can't keep throwing bad money at a lousy facility. This facility really was not built correctly to begin with, but now it's just really outgrown its usefulness. So please, put these blueprint dollars where they're meant to be, to strengthen our families, to strengthen our communities. We don't need any more sidewalks to nowhere. Put the money where the people really can benefit. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Is that the red shirt crew back there? Thank you all so much for coming this afternoon and making your voices heard. We certainly appreciate all the work that you all do to save and protect our furry animals, our family members. My former neighbor, Leslie Carlisle, I guess she's my unofficial pet consultant because I hear from Leslie all the time, if you all know Leslie. And so she keeps me abreast of these issues, and I'm sure I'll probably hear from her soon about this. I haven't yet. But we have had some discussion, and Commissioner Maddox, you might want to, Scott Maddox, you might want to jump in. I know you've been a champion of this cause for a long time. But I did have a conversation with the manager the other day concerning this, and I believe we are going to look at some options for a temporary solution until we can get to the point where the blueprint fund will be expended for a new shelter facility. Commissioner Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, the problem with changing the rankings today is what would have to be displaced are very large projects for one that is a relatively small project, but that I think we all have a desire and willingness to fix. So a couple things. One, I'm working on some short-term fixes that we can use in our individual capital funds to take care of some of the more egregious problems. But second, long-term, there's a provision within our own rules and regulations with Blueprint to take advantage of matching funds that can change a ranking for a project based on matching funds. So what I'm going to be doing is bringing this issue to our animal task force and see if we can brainstorm on matching funds either from individual capital budgets and or grants that would then affect the ranking within our processes without changing our processes.
Any other discussion? Okay. All right. Well, we have exhausted the agenda. Our next Board of Directors meeting will be December 13th. Is there anything from commissioners before we adjourn? Ben, did you have something?
Well, I just remind commissioners that we do have, we had asked for the project updates, the highly expedited project updates to be done at the end if you still would like them. That really, if nothing else, we want to highlight 880 coming to Tallahassee and what that can mean for some areas, including on the South City. If nothing else, that would be great. And while Megan is coming forward on that, I want to take just one moment from my vantage point, and I know we've said it, and and some of you have said it, but a couple things. One, we highlighted here today and made progress on economic vitality and a number of different issues. I really want to thank the team at this point in time under Al's leadership. Many of them are back in, I think, what's called the bullpen, but these are the ones that really care, bleed, and dream about this and how to make it a better go, and they're going to continue to do that well into 2020 and beyond. So just didn't say that at the beginning and want to highlight that. The second thing is it would be remiss to not, in all sincerity, join from my vantage point and on behalf of the IMC, Vincent and Reese, acknowledge a very thorough process that was conducted, a nationwide search, truly, that led back to a person who started her career as an intern in Blueprint. I think she answered one of the toughest questions an administrator can get right off the bat, and I think the motion passed, so I'm going to say it was effective. But join you in welcoming her. And I think with that, there we go, come on. So let's get going with this 880. Go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. We are so pleased to be here today to provide you an update on the Public Spaces to Great Places Summit that's scheduled for October 1st through the 5th. The summit features a week of free public events, workshops, and discussions, all focused on how we can create great places here in our community. To help us facilitate these conversations, we're going to be joined by International Civic Advisor Gil Penalosa and his team from 880 Cities. They'll be here throughout the week with us. And Commissioners, I know some of you are very familiar with 880 Cities from having spent time in them with Copenhagen as part of the 2016 study tour. And luckily for our community, they won't have to go to Copenhagen because 880 will be joining us here in Tallahassee, Leon County in just a few weeks. Gil and his 880s team have a very simple philosophy. If you build a city that's great for an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old, then you've built a city that's great for everyone. We're excited to have this dynamics and experienced team here in our community, thanks to the generous support of the Knight Foundation. And Tallahassee and Leon County were selected for this opportunity because the Knight Foundation recognized the work that we're doing and the investments that we're making in building the future of our community and building a strong, vibrant, and people-friendly city. And they really wanted to support that, and I want to just recognize the vision of this IA board for providing that. The Knight Foundation recognizes it, and it's clearly getting recognized around the state and the nation as well. So in coordination with our partners at the city and the county, we've planned a great week of events and discussions. Highlights from the week are displayed on the screen, and the detailed schedule of events is included in your packet, and it's available on the Blueprint website as well. During their time here, we're really looking forward to having the 880 Cities team help us move forward a few of our Blueprint public space projects, and we just really want to quickly highlight one of those in particular for you. At the June 21st meeting, the IA Board directed staff to initiate the Orange Avenue Meridian Road placemaking project in fiscal year 19, and on October 2nd, we're really excited to kick off that project with a community meeting. And what we're going to be talking to the community about is what they'd like to see in these future public spaces along Orange Avenue. On the map, you see the large current stormwater site, and as part of the Blueprint project, this will be transformed into a community amenity. Just north of that, you also see the future Star Metro Superstop site. Currently, this is being used daily as an informal gathering and community space, and we'd love to hear at that October 2nd meeting what we can do in the meantime, whether temporary interim uses
to make that site better for the community. So in closing, we're really excited, and we hope that you will join us for this week of events, and we look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Is that it? All right. Anything from commission members? Commissioner Dozier.
One quick thing, Mr. Chair, I didn't bring this up in item number 12. I'm excited about the arts component with Coal Chute Pond. It reminded me that we made a motion way back when we were working on Cascades to look at different ways to handle a sculpture in Boca Chuba Pond. There was an idea at one point for an actual Boca Chuba sculpture, and we dispensed with that, and I believe we said that if funding ever came available or something like that, we would look at soliciting local artists to do a sculpture there. I wouldn't mind an update on that. We may not have the money right now, but I don't know where that stands, and we did spend the money for the infrastructure in Boca Chuba Pond. Is that correct? Autumn, the infrastructure is there, correct?
Yeah, there's a platform there and electric.
Okay, so there was some interest from local sculptors in looking at that site. It was there. Again, just as we look at arts along Cascades, all the different segments, I think it would be a nice time to revisit that if there's no objection to having an update.
Is there any objection? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. We stand adjourned.
I'll see you over there where you said.